very good morning to you all. I'm Professor Durgesh from Aditya Academy. Okay, welcome to the first lecture of biology from your 8th standard, that is Maharashtra State Board. Today we'll be looking at our first chapter, that is living world classification of microbes. Okay, so before jumping on to the chapter, let me just clear you the concept of what are living organisms. Okay, living organisms are all the organisms which you will find in your surrounding, like your bacteria, your viruses, your plants, your animals, humans. Okay, all these are considered as living organisms. Okay, and majorly we'll be studying the classification of microbes in this particular chapter. Okay, so before we get into the main concept of our chapter, I just want to highlight a thing, that is, if you come to a chapter, we are having a flow chart given here on your page 1, okay, which says a few things about your living organisms. Okay, so the flow chart given here is kind of a very basic flow chart, but I would like to highlight out you the meanings of a few of the words given here. Okay, so let's make a flow chart in the similar way. So I'll be making it and explaining it to you at the same time. Okay, so let's have a look here. So see, it says your living world or your living organism. Okay, so your living organism okay, they are of two types, that is your prokaryotes and your eukaryotes. Okay, so they are of two types. First type is your prokaryote and second type is your eukaryote. Okay, so these are the two types of living organisms. Now, if you're not getting the meaning of it, I'll explain you the meaning. Okay, so whenever you find a difficult word or a big word, try breaking it down into two words and try understanding the meaning. For instance, I'll show you how or what do you understand by prokaryote. Okay, so your word prokaryote means, like, you can break it down into two halves, that is, one will be your pro. Okay, one will be your pro and other will be your cap. Okay, so your pro means primitive. Okay, and your carry-on means nucleus. Okay, so your prokaryote means a cell which has a nucleus which is of primitive or of old type. Okay, or a not well developed nucleus. So this is what your prokaryote or your prokaryotic cell means. Okay, coming to the next part, which is the eukaryotes. Okay, so again you can divide it into two, that is your eu and carry on. So here you can write it as eu and carry on. Okay, where eu means well developed and carry on means nucleus again. Okay, so eukaryotes are organisms in which you will find a well developed nucleus. The nucleus is really well developed if you are comparing with a prokaryote. Okay, continuing with the chart. Okay, in your prokaryotes you will only find your unicellular organisms. Okay, what are you going to find? You will find unicellular organisms. Okay, so again, if you are finding difficult to find the meaning of what you understand by unicellular, so for your easy understanding, unicellular, where uni means single and cellular means cell. Okay, so here you will be having all your single celled organisms, okay, in your prokaryotes. Okay, coming to your eukaryotes are subdivided into two. Okay, so they are subdivided into two, that is your unicellulars and multicellular. Okay, they are subdivided into unicellular okay, and your multicellular. Okay, so where your multicellular means your multi means multiple, okay, and your cellular again means cell. Okay, so multicellular organisms or organisms which are made up of many cells. Okay, now your unicellular organisms, they are categorized into your five, like of the five kingdom, it is categorized into the your kingdom one, that is your kingdom Monera. Okay, it is categorized into Monera. Okay, and the uh, kingdom Monera, or the total five kingdom classification, was given by a scientist called as Robert Whittaker, which you also learned in the previous classes. Okay, and presently the five kingdom classification is being followed for as a standard. Okay, so your prokaryotic unicellular organisms come under your kingdom Monera. Your eukaryotic unicellular organisms comes under your kingdom Protista. Okay, and your eukaryotes, which are multicellular in nature, they come under three different kingdoms. Okay, namely you will have your kingdom fungi as your third kingdom. You will have your kingdom plantae as your fourth kingdom. Okay, and you will have your kingdom animalia as your fifth kingdom. Okay, so talking about all like your kingdom fungi, plantae and animalia separately. Okay, so let's come to kingdom fungi first. Okay. So kingdom fungi, the members of kingdom fungi have a presence of cell wall present. Okay, they have cell wall which is present in them. So what is a cell wall? Cell wall is the outermost structure of the cell which protects the cell from any damages. Okay, so fungi will have a presence of cell wall, but a major twist comes here is that the fungi cannot prepare their own food. Okay, so eventually they won't be performing photosynthesis. No photosynthesis. Okay, so if you have a doubt, what is photosynthesis? Photosynthesis is a process by which the plants make their own food by using sunlight and chlorophyll. Okay, coming to kingdom plantae. So plants or your kingdom plantae, who are there present in kingdom plantae, they will also have a cell wall, and as I said, for photosynthesis, so they are plants, so basically they need to perform the process of photosynthesis to make their own food. So photosynthesis process will be present. Okay, so they can perform photosynthesis. Okay, coming to the last one, that is kingdom animalia. So kingdom animalia, the members do not have a cell wall, so cell wall is absent, and also no photosynthesis can be seen, as animals usually depend on others for their own food. Okay, so this is the entire flow chart of your living organisms, how are they classified and how are they placed in different kingdoms, so on and so forth. Okay, so just coming to the basics, like why do you think that is there a need to classify organisms? Okay, is there really a need? So if you're thinking, your answer is yes. So I'll give you a reason for that. Why are we classifying organisms, or specifically talking about living organisms? So the major first point, let's take under consideration, like we have a lot of organisms present on your earth. So there is a need to classify them to study it. Okay, so for example, let's take an example. If we are studying about all the organisms living in the ocean, right? So there can be many. There can be fishes, there can be plants, there can be microorganisms, there can be coral reefs. Okay, so all of these will be one living under the ocean. But imagine if we classify them into like fishes, we classify them into plants, so it would become easy for us to study them. Okay, so that's the basic need for why are we putting or classifying them according to their types. Okay, let's hop onto our textbook and let's check what is it. So as you can see here, I'll highlight you for some things. Okay, it says according to 2011 census, around 87 million of living species of organisms are found on the earth, including land and sea. Okay, to study such a vast number, it was essential to divide them into groups. And so groups and subgroups were created considering the similarities and differences among the living organisms. So this is what is your answer, like why are we classifying and how are we classifying. So all the similar one would be put in one group, like all and so on and so forth. Okay, so this is how we are doing it. Also, you can get a definition for 1 mark from this thing, like the process of dividing living organism into groups and subgroups is called as biological classification, right? This can be asked as a definition for 1 mark in your schools or your unit test exams and so on and so forth, and you can get a 1 mark from this particular point. Okay, let's hop on to the history of your classification. So as your text says, it says there was a scientist called as Carl Linnaeus, okay, in 1735, who first divided the living organism into two kingdoms, that is the Vegetabilia and the Animalia. Okay, simple, the plants and animals, and for your simple understanding. Okay, next it was a scientist called as Haeckel. In 1866, he considered or he divided into three kingdoms, that is Protista, plants and animals. Okay, coming next, there was another scientist in 1925, Chatton. He created two groups, that is your prokaryotes and eukaryotes, the one which having the not well developed nucleus, that is the prokaryote, and the one which having the developed nucleus, that is the eukaryote. Okay, and then we had in 1938 we had Copeland. He divided into four kingdoms called as Monera, Protista, plants and animals. And finally, in your like whatever we are studying, the final and the major one is given by Robert Whittaker. Okay, as you can see, Robert Harding Whittaker. He was an American ecologist and he divided into your 5 kingdom classification. Okay, so let's now study about what are the criteria that Robert Whittaker took to classify this organisms. Okay, so let's come down to the criteria what he considered for your classification. Okay, so let's see here, we have this. We have 5 criteria. The first one says the complexity of the cell structure. Okay, so what do you mean by complexity of the cell structure? It simply means that whether the organism is a prokaryote or a eukaryote. Okay, so depending, as we see in the flowchart assertion, okay, the first criteria used is whether the organism is a prokaryote or whether it is a eukaryote. Okay, the second one is complexity of the organism, means whether the organism is unicellular, is it made up of just one cell, or is it made up of many or multiple cells called as multicellular organism. Okay, coming to the third one, that is mode of nutrition. Okay, now mode of nutrition is very much important. How does the organism takes his food, okay, or has his food, like is he preparing his own food or is he depending on some other for their own food? That is the point here. Okay, so here we are considering first plants. So it says plants are autotrophic photosynthetic. Okay, plants are autotrophic photosynthetic. Now let me tell you the meaning of this. Okay, let's break it down. It says your plants, okay, I'll be writing it here. So your plants are autotrophic and photosynthetic. Okay, now let me tell you the meaning of it. So autotrophic means they can make their own food, right? So plants are always autotrophs. They make their own food via the process of photosynthesis. So autotrophic means they can make their own food. Okay, and photosynthetic, yani the process or the plants which perform photosynthesis. Generally, all the plants perform photosynthesis. So hence, plants are called as autotrophic photosynthetic. Okay, coming to the next one, that is your fungi, which are saprophytic and they absorb from dead and decaying organisms. Okay, so your fungi. Okay, so let me tell you the meaning of saprophytic. Now, saprophytic means they, or your fungi specifically, they take or absorb food, absorb their food from dead and decaying organisms. Okay, from dead and decaying organisms. Okay, so let me give you classic example of fungi, like where you can find fungi growing at your home. Okay, what you can do is just take a piece of bread, okay, sprinkle some water over it and just leave it in a closed container or your tiffin box and just leave it as it is and observe it after a couple of days. Okay, you will find small black color or green color fungi growing on it, and that is what is called as your fungus or your fungi. So how it is growing? It is just growing, like it is getting the nutrition from your bread. Okay, so as it is said, they are saprophytic, they absorb food from the dead and decaying organisms. So fungi, these are absorbing from the food from your bread, okay, and getting a kind of nutrition from it. Okay, let's come to the next, that is your animals. So they are heterotrophic and ingestive. Okay, your animals, okay, they are heterotrophic, okay, heterotrophic. So as you see, like as you saw, plants, they were autotrophic and animals, they are heterotrophic. Now what do you understand by heterotrophic is, heterotrophic means the animals, they depend on others for food. Okay, so your animals, they either eat other animals like the carnivores, or if you see the herbivorous animals, they eat plants. So they are not making their own food. Even if you consider human, we as a human or a person, we also eat veg and non-veg depending on what you are having. So we are also depending on the other sources for our food, and we are not making our own food. Hence, we also are called as heterotrophs. Okay, so these are the this is the criteria. Okay, then we have the fourth criteria, which says lifestyle. So plants, they are considered as your producers. Okay, you can mark it, you can get it for kind of match the column questions. So plants are producers, then you have animals, these are consumers, and lastly you have fungi, which are decomposers. Okay, so plants are the producers on which the entire, like the animals get feed. So your animals become your consumers, and the fungi, which feed on the dead and decaying organic matters, so they are the decomposers. Okay, the last criteria is the phylogenetic genetic relationship. Okay, so what do you understand by it? So it says nothing but like your prokaryotic to eukaryotic and unicellular to multicellular. Okay, so the relationship between these is your phylogenetic relationship. Okay, now let's come to your kingdoms. Okay, so for this lecture we'll be discussing kingdom Monera, kingdom Protista and kingdom Fungi. Okay, so let's come to one by one. So firstly we'll be looking towards your kingdom Monera. Okay, so for kingdom Monera you have an activity being given at this particular point. Okay, so let's have a look at the activity. See what does the activity says. Okay, your activity says take a small drop of curd or buttermilk on a clean glass slide. Okay, so if you're not understanding what does a glass slide mean, I'll show it to you. Okay, so your glass slide is nothing but a rectangular piece of glass, okay, which looks something like this. Okay, this is called as your glass slide. Okay, this is your glass slide. So what they are telling you should be taking a drop of buttermilk or curd on this particular glass slide. Now let's assume like this is your buttermilk or drop of curd. Okay, now let's see what they are telling else. They are telling dilute it with little water and carefully keep a cover slip over it. Okay, so I'll show you how does a cover slip work and what is the use of the cover slip. Okay, so cover slip is another small square shape like structure made up of also glass. Okay, and it is like always placed over the sample. Okay, so this is nothing but your cover slip. Okay, this is your cover slip. Okay, so what is the use of the cover slip? Basically it protects the sample. Okay, whatever sample you are placing on the glass slide, it protects it from all the contamination and also it gives you an area to see under your microscope. Okay, let's see what next they are telling. Okay, it says observe it under a high power of compound microscope and what do you see inside? Okay, so you will be seeing or you will be looking at small rod like microbes called as lactobacilli bacteria. Okay, so you will be seeing at some bacteria which are present in the curd or your buttermilk called as lactobacilli. Okay, these are good for health, they don't cause any harm when they are consumed. Okay, so see what else they are given here. They are saying all types of bacteria and blue green algae are included in the kingdom Monera. Okay, so they are also giving us a example like what are included in kingdom Monera. So all type of bacteria, blue green algae are included in kingdom Monera. Okay, this can be asked like a fill in the blank question. Okay, now let's look at the characteristics of your kingdom Monera. Like what are they? What special characteristics are Monerans having from other? Okay, so let's have a look at the first characteristics. All the organisms are unicellular. Okay, what are they? They are unicellular, that is made up of just one cell. They are all single celled organisms. Okay, next characteristics, they may be autotrophic or heterotrophic. What are they? They may be autotrophic or heterotrophic in nature. Means what? They can either perform like make their own food via the process of photosynthesis, or they'll be depending on someone for their food. Okay, third point, these are prokaryotic cells without distinct nucleus or cell organelles. Okay, what are they? They are prokaryotic cell without distinct nucleus or cell organelles. Prokaryotes means they are cells in which the nucleus is of very old type, not well developed, or primitive kind of nucleus is found in those particular cells. Okay, so here also you can get a question or like a short note form. Write down the characteristics of kingdom Monera. Okay, it can be asked for 2 marks or a short note on this can be expected. Okay, so as you can see, here are some examples of organisms from kingdom Monera. Okay, so you have Streptococcus pneumoniae, which causes pneumonia. You have Salmonella typhi, which causes typhoid. You have Vibrio cholerae, and so on. Okay, So for an example being, if it's been asked in your paper, you can write any 3 of the examples which you can clearly pronounce, you can which you can write without making a spelling mistake. You can go on for any of the 3 to 4 best example which are easy to remember for you. Okay, so we are finished with the kingdom 1, that is your kingdom Monera, and let's start with the second kingdom, that is your kingdom Protesta. Okay, so again you have an activity for kingdom Protesta, and let's have a look at it. Your activity says prepare a temporary mount. Prepare a temporary mount of 1 drop of pond water. Okay, now what's a temporary mount? Temporary mount is the same way, you are using the same glass slide. Okay, the same scenario, will be using a glass slide, and instead, like in for the Protesta, as when you did for your Monera, you added the drop of sample as a drop of buttermilk or your curd, but here you will be adding a drop of pond water. Okay, so basically you need to find out a pond for adding a pond water, but if not, you can just try or test it with the tap water. Okay, but not sure that you will be getting the result which are there in your book. So for that you will be requiring pond water. Okay, so what they are telling, make a temporary mount of 1 drop of pond water on a glass slide, observe it under low power and high power of a microscope. Now what are low power and high power? Basically whenever you are using your microscope, you can adjust your power to 10x, 25x or 100x. Okay, that is the low power is the 10x, the high power can be 100x depending on the type of the microscope which you are using. Okay, so you will be seeing the same setup. Okay, instead here you will be having the pond water, a drop of pond water, and you will be visualizing it under a microscope. Okay, now let's see what they are telling. You will find some motile microbes. Okay, what are you getting? You will find some motile microbes with irregular shape. Okay, and this is what? This is your amoeba. Okay, so now if you are having a question, what do you mean by motile? So motile, but means in simple language you can say it shows movement. Okay, movement or organism which moves or which can move is called as motile organism. Okay, is it clear? So the motile organism we are seeing here is amoeba. Okay, so again let's look at the characteristics of your kingdom Protesta. Okay, again you can get a question, same for 2 marks. Write down the characteristics of kingdom Protesta. Okay, so let's look at it. First one, Protestas are single-celled organisms. Okay, they are single-celled in nature. All unicellular organisms, they are single-celled organisms with well-defined nucleus enclosed in a nuclear membrane. So what are they? Are they eukaryotes? Yes, they are eukaryotes, because you are getting, they are having a well-defined nucleus. That's the reason I have explained you what does your eukaryote and prokaryote mean. So it is always, whenever you are studying science, it's recommended by me to learn the meanings of the word and not just learn the entire thing. Okay, you understand the meaning of the word, then it will be very much easy for you to follow your subject. Okay, so they are again eukaryotes. So I'll be writing here, they are eukaryotes. Okay, they have a pseudopodia or hair-like cilia or whip-like flagella for locomotion. Okay, now I'll show you. Okay, generally you have a amoeba like it is as it is present here. So I'll tell you, amoeba is an organism which changes its shape on its movement. Okay, I'll give you an example over it, and also I'll be explaining you what is this flagella and cilia kind of thing. Okay, imagine this is an amoeba over here present. Okay, this is the amoeba. So as I said, it can change its shape. Okay, this is the amoeba, nucleus of the amoeba. So amoeba is an organism, it's a single-celled organism, and basically all the functions of this particular amoeba is carried out by, as it is a single-celled, the cell is carrying out all the functions. Okay, right from its movement to digestion to engulfing food, everything. Okay, so let's consider like here you are having like the amoeba gets to see a food particle over here somewhere. Okay, the amoeba is hungry now. He wants the food particle here. So what will it do? It will move towards the food. Okay, remember I said amoeba can change its shape. So while movement, it can change its shape. Like how we have a skeleton, right? We have bones. So while we are walking, our bones don't get changed, right? So ऐसे चल रहे हो ऐसे तो नहीं होते ना. Okay, so the amoeba can change its shape. Now see what happens. It moves from here to here. Okay, so now it has its food over here. So now again what he'll do, he'll sit on the food and it will engulf it. Okay, it will engulf it, eat it, take the food inside it. Okay, and it will have its fun. Okay, so the process or the part through which the amoeba engulfs its food is called as your pseudopodia. Okay, talking about your cilia and flagella. Cilia and flagella are like hair-like projections which are present all over the body of your amoeba. Okay, like this, they'll be present over the edges of the amoeba. This will help the amoeba in walking or your locomotion. Okay, so is it clear? The second point, they have pseudopodia or hair-like cilia or whip-like flagella for locomotion. Okay, coming to the third point, they are autotrophs, that is they can make their own food. We have the example as Euglena volvox. Okay, and also your protestas can be your heterotrophs, example paramecium or your amoeba, which will depend on others for own food. So like the amoeba, it is not producing its own food, but it is depending on some external food for himself. Okay, so again here you are done with your kingdom 2, that is your protista. Okay, and you have your examples here, that is Euglena or your amoeba. Also you have volvox and paramecium. The diagrams are given here. You can have a clear look at this in your textbook. Okay, coming to the third kingdom, that is your kingdom fungi, and the last kingdom for our lecture for today. Okay, so here again we have an activity. So see what they are telling. Take a piece of bread or bhakri and keep it in a container with lid for 2 to 3 days. Okay, so just take a piece of bread, a leftover bread, not just get any bread and just keep it, just the one which will be getting waste, keep it aside in a container and cover it up, like close the lid of the container and keep it for 2 to 3 days. After 2 to 3 days, a fine cotton thread like tuft is found growing on the surface of the bread. Okay, so we'll be finding a fine thin cotton like thing growing on the surface of the bread. And what you need to do, make a temporary mount of few threads of this culture and observe it under a microscope. Okay, so on the same thing, you will be taking a glass slide, putting a thread like the tuft of the thread and observe it under a microscope. So what are you going to see? You are going to see a picture like this. Okay, the fungus which is in your book, the figure 1.4 is your fungus which you usually observe under a microscope. Okay, so again looking at the characteristics, so very much important. You can also get a question from this side. Okay, so characteristics of kingdom fungi. The first characteristics, they are non-green, eukaryotic and heterotrophic in nature. Okay, so non-green, yani they cannot perform photosynthesis, right? So if they are not performing photosynthesis, they will but obviously heterotrophic in nature. Okay, so this is how basics, if your basics are strong, you don't need to learn or ratify things. Okay, you just need to understand things and you are good to go. Okay, so they are non-green. Okay, they are non-green, eukaryotic and heterotrophic organism. That means it depends on other for food. It depends on for food. Okay. Next point, most of them are saprotrophs. They feed upon dead and decaying organic matter. Okay, so they are saprotrophs, yani they get feed or nutrition from the dead parts and decaying organisms. They cannot make their own food. Okay, third is the cell wall is made up of tough and complex sugar called as chitin. This is a very, very important point. Okay, please mark it as important. Okay, so it can also be asked as a fill up question. the cell wall is made up of tough and complex sugar called as chitin. Okay, so the question can be the cell wall of fungi is made up of tough and complex sugar called as dash. Okay, you can get a question like for MCQ or fill in the blank in this type. Okay, next you have the fourth point. Some fungi are thread-like and many nuclei are present in the cytoplasm. Okay, so they will be having more nuclei present in the cytoplasm. And lastly, you have your example, that is baker's yeast. So baker's yeast is the one which you use in your cakes, you use in your buns, bread, doklas. Okay, all these where the product is getting like baked. Okay, so you use generally baker's yeast. Okay, next you have is your aspergillus, that is your fungus on your corn, and last you have is your penicillium and mushrooms. Okay, so mushrooms are also kind of not kind of, they are also fungus. So some people may be allergic to mushrooms. Okay, so if they consume mushroom by mistakenly or like if unknowingly they consume a mushroom, they can even get rashes or having itchiness on all over body. Okay, so this is your overall your all the three kingdoms studied in detail according to your book, and that's it for our this lecture, and we'll be continuing the rest of the chapter in the next lecture. Thank you.